What's up, YouTube? This is me, David Lee Chusar Shea, representing Christ-centered mental health. I'm just coming to you. This is gonna be my live stream Q&A on faith and mental illness. So this is where I answer your questions concerning faith and mental illness topics. So I'm gonna I open up the chat. So any questions you may have for me concerning mental illness and faith issues, please feel free to ask me your questions, and I'll do my best to answer your questions from a Christian perspective. Now, I do have a couple of videos that I want to share on this topic. So let me go ahead and pull these up real quick. Like the first video it's from Vice. It's about a woman named Allie. Her name's Allie Burke. She has schizophrenia. And the reason I want to show you this video, first off, the first reason is to give you a tangible example of what it's like for someone who struggles with mental illness or schizophrenia specifically to live their life on a day-to-day basis. And also to give you someone for you to pray for. Her name's Allie Burke. Please lift her up in prayer. Yeah. Glorifying an eng. Oh, your name got cut off, but this person says hi. Hi, I say hi back. How are you doing today? All right, so let me get this started. All right, let's get this started. Okay. So let's.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 24th at about 4:30 a.m. I just took 3 medications, BoostBarb, Procream, and Duloxetine.
When I have an episode of hallucinations, I will hear these very loud voices very close to my ear. It's almost like a whisper, but it's loud. If I had to describe.
By the way, glorifying. I just want to let you know the reason why I'm showing this video is for a twofold purpose. You missed what I said earlier. Like I want to show you guys someone who has schizophrenia and what it's like for them to live on a day-to-day basis with this mental disorder, and I also want to give you someone to pray for. But yeah, her name's Allie Burke, by the way. All right.
I did it like with a shadow could yell.
Feeling a little deflated, I'm really stressed out, and stress really exacerbates symptoms of schizophrenia.
I have some concerns with anyone standing directly behind me. I have also seen these like shadows on the walls that come along with the voices, like a monster.
That's actually like okay. I can identify with this. I don't I have some visual hallucinations when I'm unstable, but most of my hallucinations are really auditory, like I hear voices. But she like it is I don't know how common it is for people with schizophrenia to have visual hallucinations, but I have heard that people do who have visual hallucinations, they do commonly see like shadows and stuff like that. So
Going across the wall.
I personally, when I see hallucinations, I see like animals that aren't there really. Like I'll see like cats walking around, or dogs, or stuff like that. I see like animals, but yeah.
My name is Allie Burke, and I live with paranoid schizophrenia.
Did you know you can receive
Oh,
free cell
crap.
phone service? That's right. Thanks to the COVID-19 Relief Act, you can enjoy unlimited.
Mornings are hard, especially during the week. I mean, it's hard for anyone to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Me having to take antipsychotic medication, it's really hard to get up. I set like 5 alarms in the morning, and sometimes I still can't get up, and my dad will come in and be like, "Don't you have to go to work?" I am 32 years old, and I live with my dad. Paranoid schizophrenia is a brain disorder which can cause a multitude of symptoms. The way that it manifests.
You hear that, Nuthetic counselors? Paranoid schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder is a brain disorder, meaning it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. So, like, it's not because of some secret sin or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Like, I just had to put that out there. I'm sorry.
With me is paranoia. I am afraid of being poisoned. So I have some concerns with anyone like standing directly behind me, being too close to me.
And that is why, like, it is common for people with schizophrenia and just mental illness in general to have paranoid thoughts that that our psychiatrist is trying to poison us with medication. And that's why it's so dangerous to tell someone with mental illness not to take our medication, because we're already having these delusional thoughts that our psychiatrist is trying to poison us, and you're going to tell us not to take medication. Well, then we just might listen and stop taking our medication, and then that will cause a whole lot of problems. So yeah.
And also leaving my drink down where I can't see it. So that is an everyday thing for me, even with medication. Some things that the medication has helped me with is the hallucinations, such as the voices and the shadows that I see. I do, on occasion, still hear voices. It's in a language that I can't understand, and there's another voice that tells me that I'm useless and worthless and not worth anything, and that I should.
Now, I've never heard voices in another language before. Like, that's when I first saw this video, I thought that was interesting because I never thought of that before. Hearing voices in another language, that's definitely different. I never known anybody who's ever told me they've heard voices in another language. If you have mental illness or schizophrenia in general, or specifically, and you hear voices in another language, I'll be willing to hear you out on that. I want to hear what that's like because I never heard that before. When I hear a voice, it is typical to hear voices that are very negative, that tell you you're worthless and stuff like that. When I typically hear voices, I hear voices typically telling me that I'm God and that people are worshiping me and stuff like that. That's typically what I hear when I hear voices. And it typically happens like in church, like if we're in worship service and we're worshiping God. I'm looking at the hymnal, and I hear voices telling me, "Oh, they're worshiping you because you're God." Or like if we're praying, if I'm in like a group prayer and people are praying to God, I hear a voice telling me, "Oh, they're praying to you. You better listen to them." So yeah, like that's typically the kind of voices I hear.
Just quit and give up everything that I do. So I take these 3 medications in the morning. There are 2 antidepressants and 1 anti-anxiety. Me being tired is definitely a side effect of the antipsychotic medication that I take at night. My boyfriend and I are going to see a movie today. This morning, before the movie, I'm going to work on some stuff. I'm the senior VP of a nonprofit organization. Stigma Fighters essentially is a platform to give people with mental illnesses a voice. I do work a lot for the day job, and then I have my writing stuff, and I'm working on a couple projects right now with a couple other people with schizophrenia, so it's a lot. It's a lot to do, and not enough time today. No wonder I can't see. I never really realized as a child that there was something potentially wrong with me. I just thought that's one of those scary things that you have to deal with when you go to bed at night. The monsters come out, and that's really how I looked at it. Fast forward a little bit, I was
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting that she experienced this as a child, because, like I've said before, it is actually really rare for someone to be diagnosed with mental illness, or more specifically schizophrenia, as a young child. So it's interesting to see that she's had this pretty much her whole life.
And I started hearing the voices while I was taking a test. And that was the first time I had ever heard them during the daytime. The next couple years were really difficult. They started getting worse and worse. And I started seeing these like shadows around. So eventually I went to see a psychiatrist, and they prescribed me some medication, which would be many, many years of me trying different medications and trying to figure out what works for me. That time,
I've had the same experience. Like, it took many, many years for psychiatrists to figure out the right medication for me that actually works. Thank God that finally we have figured out the right medication for me that works. But it's taken a long time and a lot of trial and error. That's actually common. So for those of you that have mental illness that are dealing with trying to find the right medication, and you just, for some reason, you can't find it right now, don't lose heart. Be patient. Work with your psychiatrist. Be completely honest with your psychiatrist about everything, how the medication makes you feel, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Tell them everything, because that's the best way they can figure out how to help you. Don't leave out any details. And when they and just have and be hopeful. Like, there will come a time where they will find the right medication that will work for you. So just hang in there and just be honest with your psychiatrist. That's the best advice I can give you when working with a psychiatrist.
they diagnosed me with schizoaffective disorder, but a couple years later they changed it to paranoid schizophrenia. It's very scary to know that at any time, something could happen where you're going to see something that maybe other people don't see, or you're going to hear something that other people don't hear.
It is a scary thought to live constantly with the idea that at any time you could see something or hear something that other people don't hear. And it's also a very troublesome thought, because you never know. Anytime I see something new that I don't normally see, like, I always wonder to myself, do other people see? Like, if I see a new cat that I don't regularly see on a normal basis, I always wonder, do other people see this cat that's walking around? And it's not a good thought to have. Like people shouldn't be thinking like this, but yeah.
It's not 100% that I can predict that I'm going to have an episode today. It is going to happen sometimes, and that, I think, is just the nature of how the disorder affects me personally. But there are triggers that I have identified for myself, which includes like stress and feeling overwhelmed.
Just in time for the holidays, right now you can get 20% off of your entire Manscaped order as part of their site-wide holiday.
It's actually really important to that if you struggle with mental illness for you to identify your triggers, because unless you identify your triggers you're not going to know how to combat your symptoms. So if you have schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness, I highly suggest you log exactly what triggers your mental health symptoms, because that way you'll know for yourself what triggers it, and you can know what to do when those instances happen, and then you can let your loved ones know. That way they can be aware of what triggers your symptoms, and then they can either avoid doing those things or saying those things, and um or they will know how to help you out when those instances happen. So
I don't know how conclusive this is, but there's some information out there to suggest that smoking or vaping can reduce the side effects of antipsychotic medication. It keeps me calm,
and oh,
especially in high stress days. The internet has been very helpful in connecting with people with schizophrenia. A friend of mine found me on my Facebook page. He's an artist, and he actually made an illustration of me. These are the medications that I take. There's books there because he knows that I'm obsessed with reading. It was very difficult at first because I didn't have insurance. My first doctor was trying to work around that. And at the time, the medication that worked really well for me did not have a generic. It's taken me pretty much.
that right there was what you just read. Hold on, let me rewind that real quick. It says some name brand antipsychotic medications can cost over $1,000 per month without insurance. And this is why I know this is going to get a little controversial, but this is why I support Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, because there are a lot of people who have struggled with mental illness who can't afford private insurance, and then they can't afford these medications on their own, and yet they need medications in order to function in everyday life. So that is why it is so important for people to have health care, even if it is the Affordable Care Act. Like, they need health care because so they can have their medications and they can be able to live and function in civilized society. If you're against the Affordable Care Act, then what else are you going to do to help out people with mental illness? We can't just lock people up in institutions. So, like, and if that's your answer, then I hope you can see the obvious problems with that line of thinking. So, all right.
It's taken me pretty much since I was 26, probably till I was 31, to get the right mix of medications. So these are the two medications I take at night. Zyprexa is antipsychotic, and the Ambien is a sleep pill.
I've been on Zyprexa before, and all it did really was make me really hungry, and I ate a whole lot. And I've also been on Ambien, and that worked. It put me to sleep and caused me to talk in my sleep a lot. My wife can tell you some funny stories about that. But so I mean, I had nothing against Ambien though. That put me to sleep and I slept soundly. The Zyprexa though didn't really do anything for me.
I do come out here a lot. I love the flowers. I grew up in this house, so it's a good environment for me. I have no idea what any of this stuff is, but it's all so beautiful, so I love it. Come on. If I'm having...
Isn't that such a cute cat? Like, for those of you that know me or that have been subscribed to my channel, you know that I love cats. I think that's just the cutest little cat. Sorry, I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah.
Bad day or I'm having some symptoms, I can just get close to the animals and they'll always be there. They love you unconditionally, no matter.
Animals are a good support for people who have mental illness. So if you have a mental illness and you like animals, I highly suggest you get an animal as an emotional support animal, because animals make very good companions for people with mental illness. Before I was married, I actually had two cats. Like I love those cats to death. Like they were amazing pets. I had to get rid of them because I ended up having to get my mom off the street, and my mom was more important to me than the cats. So like I had to get rid of the cats. But I do strongly suggest that if you have a mental illness, I do suggest you get some kind of animal as an emotional support pet.
No matter what you're going through. So come on, in or out? In or out? Okay. Pick one.
Hi, Alex.
Hello. It's good to see your face.
It's good to see you too.
So I wanted to give you a call and talk a little bit about the book that we discussed, kind of about, our experiences with schizophrenia.
I had a couple of suicide attempts when I was psychotic, and I think that's important to include in my backstory as well. I mean, people saved my life, and I'm so thankful to those people, those strangers who stepped in and literally acted and saved my life. So
Yeah.
I probably include that in my
I
backstory.
personally didn't know anyone with schizophrenia when I was diagnosed. So I think it really helps to have someone to relate to and to give you advice from time to time.
I agree with that. It is very important. Like when you have a mental illness, it is very important for you to connect with other people who have mental illness. So I suggest joining a support group. If you don't know anybody around you who has a mental illness, I suggest you join a support group. There's bipolar support groups, there's schizophrenic support groups, there's anxiety support groups. There's all kinds of support groups for all different kinds of mental illnesses. So I strongly suggest you get plugged in. You can Google them, like Google, just type in bipolar support group on Google in your area, and I'm pretty sure there'll be a bunch that pops up. Like I strongly suggest you look them up and get plugged in, because it is very healthy to connect with other people like you, and who you can interact with and who understand you and can help you out and give you advice. And actually that's why on my Patreon account I started a Discord community for Patreon members who suffer with mental illness who are Christians, for peer support and like fellowship with other like-minded believers over mental health issues and who share the same faith. And so it's for Patreon members. So if you do decide to support this ministry, like you have access to the private Discord community. So that's a little plug for that. Like, yeah.
Going to my boyfriend's house. We were together for 2 years. We took some time apart because of how I was struggling with schizophrenia. He pays attention and kind of knows when I'm having a hard time. So
Another
he
ad.
is amazing.
Did you know that after 180 days of being in a collection that you don't owe that debt anymore? Did you guys know that? Did you know that it's
I think that's beautiful that she's in a like. I think it's awesome when mentally ill people find someone that they can romantically get involved with, because it is very hard for someone with mental illness to be alone. So when we find I'm very thankful for my wife that she actually took the time to understand me and my illness, and she's a constant support to me. Like I'm so thankful to God for providing me with my wife, and like showing, because she shows me the love of Christ on a daily basis. She's very patient with me, and she's very compassionate towards me, and I do think people with mental illness should find someone who understands them, or at least is willing to take the time to understand them and be there for them. And when you do find that person, like, don't hesitate to allow them to love you, to accept their love. I know it's hard for those of us with mental illness to accept love from someone, but just allow yourself to trust the person. And when you find that safe person that you can trust, allow yourself to be loved by them. And trust me, you won't regret it.
Want me to try? I'll try.
That we've ever seen.
Another thing that really is good too is accepting the love from our Heavenly Father. Like, this video doesn't really show that because it's a secular video, but when you struggle with mental illness, like, it's hard to understand that there is any kind of person out there that loves you. But just know that when you're in Christ, God loves you unconditionally. He loves you. And like the Apostle Paul says in Romans, there is nothing that separates you from the love of God that's found in Christ Jesus. There's nothing in this life or in death or in all of creation that can separate you from the love of God that's in Christ. So allow that truth to penetrate your heart and penetrate your mind, and just know that God loves you. And just think about that. Meditate on that truth. God loves you unconditionally, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what happens in this life, God still loves you. And He is the Almighty Creator who is in control of everything that takes place on this creation. Like, nothing catches Him by surprise. Your mental illness did not catch Him by surprise. He preordains everything that comes to pass, so you can accept His love. Even if you don't have anyone else, you can accept the love of the Father found in Christ Jesus, and you can live your life in light of God's love.
We're moving together in the theater, aren't we weren't able to get tickets in the very back, which is usually where we sit, because my paranoia makes it difficult for anyone to be behind me. But they weren't available, so I am a little cautious about going, but I'm a huge fan, so I'll have to suck it up. I was living with Delon. I was just really struggling with mental health. I was in a bad way. I was depressed. I was anxious. I didn't feel as if I was in a position to support him in a relationship. So I said, I'm going to move in with my dad and see how that goes. And of course, we found each other again about 5 months ago, and it's been absolutely amazing. Spend every moment we can with each other. So I do sometimes regret leaving, but at the same time, in the state of health that I am in now, I really feel that it was the right thing to do, both for me and for him.
You know what you want to get?
What are you getting?
Check this out.
I know, you didn't know they had that here? So when I walk into a restaurant that's, kind of...
Let me check the questions real quick if I have any questions. Okay, so Glorifying says, what is the best way to discern if you're having a hallucination? The best way to discern if you're having a hallucination. Well, one of the ways that I discern is the best way of having a hallucination, that I'm having a hallucination, is I'll ask someone. Like, if I see something that I don't normally see, like if I see a cat that I don't normally see around, I'll ask someone, hey, do you see that cat too? And if they say yes, then obviously it's not a hallucination. But if they say no, then I ignore the cat. Like now, like I know this is hard for people because I don't feel any shame when I ask people this because I know what I am. I know who I am. I'm a child of the King, and I know my identity in Christ is secure. It doesn't matter what people think of me. So I don't have any problem asking, but I can understand if someone who has mental illness has a hard time or they worry about what people would think of them. So in their case, I think the best way to judge if they're having a hallucination would be probably I don't know, I guess it depends on hallucination. I would if I was them, I would pray and ask God to reveal that to them. Like ask God to help them, give them the discernment to be able to tell what's a hallucination and what's not a hallucination. And if they have a loved one that they trust, maybe they can ask their loved one to tell them, hey, I see that there, or I see that person, or I don't see that. And then they can take their loved one at their word. So Kenneth Herford says, God bless you, David Chu. God bless you too, Kenneth. Or Casey. Like, yeah, God bless you too. All right. All right, let's continue on.
Busy, for example, I would usually look for a table like this, which I think is very lucky today because you can't always find them. It's fear, really, that someone is trying to harm me. Someone is standing behind me trying to harm me.
And it's funny because yesterday that she was telling me that I was good with making sure that she gets a boot or something against the wall. She said I'm good with it, but actually, to be honest, it comes naturally.
I know it's not.
Oh, I would say another way to discern, like if for auditory hallucination, I know typically if I have an auditory hallucination that it's not real. Because if I hear a voice and I don't see anything that to match the voice up with, then I know that's obviously a hallucination. Like if I hear a voice talking to me, but I don't see a voice coming from any person's mouth, then obviously that's a hallucination. So
For me to not want to look away from my drink at a restaurant, but I can't shake it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I do have plans to move in with the line. Besides my dad, I couldn't think of a better person, more supportive person to start life with. I'm very fortunate because not everyone with this illness is able to access medication like I can. I don't know where I'd be today without my insurance. I'm in my 30s and I live with my dad, but my fear is that I won't be able to work and I won't be able to qualify for disability and, I won't be able to have a home or have a car. That fear comes from people that are in that situation. There are people with schizophrenia who don't have a home and don't have anyone to support them.
that is true. There is a high percentage of people with schizophrenia and mental illness in general who are homeless and they do not have anybody to help them out and support them who cares about them. So if you have mental illness or specifically schizophrenia and you have some people that love you and care for you and you have a stable housing and a stable income, you are blessed and you should consider yourself blessed by God. Because there's a lot of the sad, unfortunate reality is that so many of us are not that fortunate. Like,
It is a very real thing that's going on in our world and scares me.
according to the World Health Organization, schizophrenia affects more than 21 million people worldwide. That is staggering. Like, all right, so that's the first video. There's no questions right now, so I'm gonna move on to the next video. The next video, by the way, I do apologize. This video, it was a video response from the Amazing Atheist to this guy who made this video called "Mental Illness is All Fake," and because the atheists in this video responding to this video, there is a lot of cursing, and the guy that made the video that the atheists are responding to curses a lot. And I tried to find the actual video, even though the guy in the video was cursing too. But I wanted to find the actual video so there wouldn't be as much cursing. But I couldn't find it, so I just decided to stick with this video. So if cursing bothers your sensibilities, I'd be fine if you logged out now. But if you're not bothered by cursing, then please stick it through, and we'll watch this video together and discuss this. Again, if you have any questions for me about anything, please feel free to put your questions in the comments, and I'll answer your questions as the best I can from a Christian perspective. So let's get started right here. Mental illness is all fake.
Here's a video with a guy calling bullshit on what he thinks are fake mental disorders. Mental disorders aren't real, they're fake. All of them? Apparently so. Wow. I don't know why he showed
Hey everybody, Captain here. We're doing a Uncle Burn, Unky Burnu. Bernard Chapin, check him out. He's got a YouTube channel.
This guy is probably the worst of the worst. Like, honestly, that's how I feel about it. Like, he also, but honestly, like, I don't want to, I'm not showing you guys this so you guys can trash him and slander him or anything like that. I want you guys pray for him as well. And I want to show you some of the ignorance that is pervasive amongst a lot of people in today, because he's not just the only one who believes the stuff that he's saying. This is common beliefs among a lot of people in this country about mental illness. And I want you to see that this is what commonly people think about mental illness in general. So, like, yeah.
He always has the flag. The reason I had the flag in the back is not because I'm trying to do Bernard Chapin. It's because the woman is in my chair. My chair where I normally film this shit. In my mother's basement at my mother's house. Of course, because that's where we all broadcast. Us nerdy type asshole guys like me. Anyway.
Nerdy type asshole guy.
Nerdy type asshole guy.
You know, I never understood this about YouTube. These people have these really small channels. They make all these references like you're supposed to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just totally lost, and I'm like, okay, all right, and I don't know what you're talking about. Just get to the point of the video.
This is, as you know, I have my consulting division.
No.
And it hasn't been that many, but it's one too many.
Yeah, I kind of wish this guy would get on with his point too, but like I don't like when people take forever to get to their point. I that's why in my videos I try and like I try and get to my point in a fairly reasonable time, because I know people don't like to have their time wasted, and so yeah.
Draw the broken camel's back, and it is the people that claim they have a mental disability, and I'm not talking like schizophrenia or something serious. I'm talking what is, your modern day.
All mental illnesses are serious. I don't like how he just says schizophrenia is the only mental illness that's serious. Any mental illness is serious. Depression is serious. PTSD is serious. Like, just because it's not schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, like, it doesn't mean it's not serious. Anxiety disorder is a serious mental illness. All mental illnesses are serious.
Psychological problems, ADD, Asperger's, ADHD, DDHD, DDHD.
DDHD? Never heard of that one.
That's Dungeons and Dragons high definition.
Dungeons and Dragons high definition.
So,
studying HD,
so
1080p.
Who the fuck is he to decide which ones are real and serious and which ones are not?
That is a good point. Like, I mean, besides the cursing again, I apologize for the cursing, but who is he to decide which illnesses are considered serious or not? Like, it doesn't this guy's arrogance is very evident.
Renowned psychiatrist. You know, I understand when you say, hey, you claim someone has, you know, a mental disorder or mental illness, there should be some evidence, but how can he just declare that shit's made up? I don't understand. Because he is the arbiter of everything.
Well,
No, he's a well-trained psychiatrist.
Schizophrenia is real.
Well, schizophrenia is real. Tell me how that makes you feel. Schizophrenia is real, man, but like all this other shit, like ADD, ADHD, all that bullshit. That's
DDHD.
DDHD, DCD. You done with OPP? Yeah, you know me.
ADHD, disability. I remember one gal who was in my dance classes. She claimed she was bipolar or something, and she was living on Social Security,
It's a very serious mental.
disability for Social Security. And I'm here to say I've had enough. It's all fucking bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on these fucking bullshit.
I do want to ask. If I knew this guy, I would ask him, what is his credentials for him to be able to determine that all mental illnesses are quote unquote bullshit? Like, what are his credentials? Like, where does he get off making this clinical analysis that mental illnesses are fake? Like, I mean, does he have a PhD in psychology? Does he have a PhD in psychiatry? Does he what qualifies him to be able to make this assessment that mental illnesses are not real?
Mental disorders.
They're not. Bullshit, bullshit, fucking bullshit. Now, at first, you know, he says they're making a claim, okay, and I can understand that. Now he's making a claim, so hopefully he'll present some brilliant evidence. I'm pretty skeptical that's going to happen. But like, does he understand that at this point we actually have enough of an understanding of the brain where we can actually physically see some of the things that are happening that cause the disorder?
Yeah.
I don't think. Okay.
Real. They're a bunch of fucking bullshit, and you're using it for a fucking crutch. And I'll explain it to you in two ways here. Why? One, I really do believe it's bullshit because this crap didn't exist 20 years ago. Okay.
Whoa. What?
This didn't exist 20 years ago. Like, and they're about to point out that you can actually go to the DSM 20 years ago and see that mental illnesses did exist 20 years ago. Like, this guy doesn't just like the guys in the other live stream I did, the biblical counselors, just like I pointed out about them, this guy doesn't understand mental illnesses, and like it's very indicative of the fact that he is very ignorant. Like he doesn't know what he's talking about. And like I said, this is common. Unfortunately, a lot of people actually believe this stuff in this society, and it's sad. He's not the only one. He really isn't. Like this is common beliefs amongst the general population. Like,
20 years ago?
It didn't exist 20 years ago. Okay, just go pick up the DSM from 20 years ago, and yes, it did. Yeah, not to mention that he believes in human evolution, mental disorders probably exist as long as there's and then far before that, you see other animals. I mean, there's actually, with a few exceptions, we can find the same disorders that mental disorders that human beings have in animals. Yeah. And there are a few exceptions to that. Schizophrenia actually is one of the ones that there's really no animal, nobody observed schizophrenia. Yeah, they don't have. There's no animal that has the same symptoms, at least as far as we can tell. But things like bipolar disorder, ADHD, like compulsive disorders. Now, I would agree with if he was just saying maybe some of these disorders are overdiagnosed, or that there's people who just diagnose themselves with these disorders.
sure. At one time, mental illnesses were overly diagnosed. People bring this up all the time that mental illnesses are overly diagnosed. I don't really see any evidence of that today. Like, mental illnesses are not overly diagnosed today. The more we grow in our knowledge of mental illnesses and how the brain works and stuff like that, the the less mental illnesses tend to be overly diagnosed, because now psychiatrists are diagnosing people who really need to be diagnosed with a mental illness. So if you are diagnosed with a mental illness by a licensed psychiatrist, and I do not recommend that you self-diagnose, because that's highly dangerous. Like, if you have a suspicion that you may have a mental illness, like, I suggest you see a licensed psychiatrist, and let them diagnose you. And if they diagnose you, then most likely you have that mental illness that they're diagnosing you with.
Or something like that, then surely yes, that does have diagnosis. But to just flat out state they don't exist, you can't just say, man, this shit went around 20 years ago. It's like, okay, yes, it was. All you have to do is consult the DSM from 20 years ago, and you'll see that, yeah, most of these disorders that are listed now are still listed then. And the other thing about it is that if you're going to contradict science, you have to present other science, or talk about why you feel like the methodology that was used to arrive at the conclusion that these diseases exist is flawed somehow. You can't just say it's bullshit because I fucking think it's bullshit, man. Way too generalized.
If we apply the same standards today that we do to kids today, then half of my generation would have had some kind of disease. Half of all previous generations would have had some kind of fucking disease. But if you go back in time, you start to notice that the older the generations are, the more stable and mentally sane they were. The societal performance, economic performance.
That's not true. That's not true. That's just flat out false. Just because we didn't have the same advanced diagnostic techniques, yeah, that doesn't mean people were like more sane back then. And people probably had a more of a high mental illness in a society.
I would argue that people back then had just as much mental illness, probably even more mental illness going on than people nowadays. And here's my reason for that. Because back then, people didn't really have the kind of knowledge about mental illness and how the brain works that we have now. So therefore, they wouldn't have known how to treat mental illnesses back then. And therefore, mental illness back then went untreated. And since mental illness is a progressive disease that gets worse over time as it goes untreated, that would inevitably result in worsening mental illness and more mental illness spreading throughout the land. So I would say that mental illness is probably worse back then than it is now.
Right. It's still not well understood, but it's less well understood. It's probably a social problem. I mean, are you really going to look at human history and say that human beings have always been like sane and well-adjusted and normal? I mean, are you forgetting the fucking like the witch hunts and the crusades and the fucking astonishing rate of violence that existed up until recent times? Oh yeah, you can look at 500 years ago. Look at the murder rates. Obviously these are estimates. What is it? The Stephen Finger book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. Better Angels of Our Nature. Yeah, go read that book and go see if this argument holds any water to you afterwards.
It was much better than it was today. Right?
Yeah.
So don't tell me that there are these new problems creeping up. They've always been with society. It's just that society fucking dealt with them. And I don't believe there's just problems. Right? They're just problems every day. Everybody.
This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Society didn't effing deal with these problems. When it came to the issue of mental illness, society didn't just deal with it. The way society dealt with mental illnesses was by locking people up in mental asylums where they were living in the worst possible living conditions known to man, and a lot of them were even being blatantly tortured to death. So that was the way they treated mental illnesses, like back in the day. So like they didn't I wouldn't suggest, or I wouldn't say that people just effing dealt with mental illnesses back in the day. They didn't. Like they really didn't.
Has. Okay, so that's one thing. I don't believe they're real fucking news. Now, if you're like Rain Man, yeah, that might be real autism. But this
Autism is a spectrum and it's extremely wide. I mean, there are people who have autism that can't even speak.
Yeah,
So-
and there are people who are far less disabled than that. I just think he's way too cavalier with this. He's like, oh, this is like, unless you're, totally disabled, it's not, it's bullshit.
Doug has dyslexia, my son. No, you're a fucking shitty parent is what it is. And maybe your kid's just fucking stupid.
Wow.
What?
Okay, for those of you parents out there who have a child that has autism, I sincerely apologize to you on the behalf of this guy's sake. Like I highly admire parents who have to deal with autistic children because I know that autistic children can be a challenge. I mean, any child that has mental illness is a challenge, and I do admire any parent who deals and takes care of their child with mental illness. Like, I can't even imagine how tough of a job you have, and for this guy to come on here and flat out insult you and say that you're a crappy parent because of your child being autistic, like I'm offended for you, and I apologize for this guy. I apologize on his behalf. Like, it is horrible. This is such a horrible thing for him to say that.
People with dyslexia are not even stupid. Dyslexia is that's like when you have difficulty like reading because the letters, the order of the letters start fucking up in your head. Yeah, I remember you might have difficulty with left and right, which I have. I remember you had a friend that was like Nintendo 46 from that. Right. It's just like he wasn't stupid. It's not that he's stupid. It's just that he has a fucking.
I never known anybody that had dyslexia, but I mean, I know sometimes if I stare at a screen for too long, like if I stare at a computer screen for too long and then I try and read a book, my eyes will get like temporarily dyslexic where like the words will start getting all jumbled up and everything. It'll be hard for me to focus. That's why if I stare at a screen for too long, I have to take a break for a little while before I read. I can't read right away after staring at a screen for a long time, like, because it'll be really difficult. But like, yeah, I just want to put that out there.
Dyslexia is not really a serious mental disorder. No.
It's a learning disability.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It is a learning disability.
And it's not, it doesn't mean that you're fucking stupid or that your parents are shitty. It just means that there's something in your brain that doesn't process that correctly. I mean, like, when you understand, like, okay, look, if you have a computer, right, what you basically have is a human being's attempt at creating an artificial brain. And, your computer can start doing wacky shit, like if you have a corrupted file or something. And the brain is far more complex than your fucking PC. So it's basically like you have a corrupted file somewhere in your brain. Something is not functioning the way that it's supposed to.
Right.
And that's what causes stuff like that. And for him to say, like, that just doesn't exist, you're a fucking moron.
Yeah, I think this guy is one of the biggest assholes we've covered in a while.
Truly.
Hey, maybe that's it. Maybe it's not a real mental disease. Maybe your kid is fucking dumb. Or maybe you're a shitty parent. But stop fucking blaming her. Here's another one. Oh, it's an attention deficit disorder. I don't know. Maybe the teachers are boring as fuck and the kids are just... I'm surprised. Whatever.
Sleeping has...
Again, like, sleeping has nothing to do with attention deficit disorder. Like, people who have attention deficit disorder, it has nothing to do with sleeping in class. Like, attention deficit disorder is an inability to concentrate, and they get distracted easily. An attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is when you have an inability to concentrate and you have hyperactivity attached to it, like you have high amounts of energy and you can't calm down. So, like, this guy, like, and again, I apologize to any teachers out there that see this who are offended by what this guy just said. You're not a crappy teacher just because, or you're not a boring teacher just because you have a student that can't focus in your class. It's not your fault. Like, I understand that being a teacher is a hard job, and I apologize to any teachers out there for what this guy said. Like, this is horrible that he said that.
Has nothing to do with attention deficit disorder at all.
Yeah, it's difficulty focusing, and it's like you have all these different ideas at once.
Your mind is
focus on one thing.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard theories that ADD is remnants of hunter-gatherer instinct. Because hunter-gatherers could just sit there and focus on one thing at a time. They were always all over the place, looking for food and other ways to survive. So,
right. I mean, there's different ways of thinking, and maybe there's, our understanding of mental health care and mental illness and all this, mental disabilities and all this stuff is always going to be changing and evolving because we really don't understand the brain yet. We've made enormous strides towards understanding it, but it's not like we have mastery of this. Yeah, but the way science approaches this, or the scientific community or the medical community, is based on evidence of like, hey, we know this is a problem, we know this is this disorder. How can we try to best treat or deal with this disorder? What causes this disorder? We don't just simply say, oh well, you're a bad parent. Yeah, I mean, like that's a very simple. You basically just want to be dismissive and say like, this is bullshit. It's all a bunch of shit. Deal with it.
I had attention deficit disorder then back in high school and college. They didn't dope us up with Ritalin because it wasn't a fucking mental problem. Right?
or maybe
it was a mental problem. Like he again, he's operating under the assumption that this wasn't a problem back in the day. It was a problem. It's just that back then we didn't have the knowledge to identify it. But now we have the knowledge to identify it, and so we can understand it better.
I mean, I can't speak for his personal situation, but maybe at his time, the doctors where he lived had decided that, you know, using a stimulant medication helped with attention deficit disorder.
Right. And I think there was definitely a time period, maybe it's still going on, I'm not really clear, where ADD, ADHD were like being massively overdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone can really deny that. Sure. But that doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate cases of it.
There were people back in the day who had this kind of guy's attitude about left-handed people. Oh, you're just stupid. Why don't you just learn how to write with your right hand?
Yeah, you can just learn how to do it. Sure.
Yeah, it's not normal. It's bullshit. You're just a shitty parent for not letting your kid be right.
Yeah, even though everything is designed for right-handed people, you know, and
right.
How detrimental, you do it all realize it, like, you know, if you're right-handed, this is perfect thing, we take it for granted. If you're left-handed, you know, your dominant hand, like, everything is backwards for you almost. But no, that's actually just bad parenting. Yeah, I don't believe in all this left-handed bullshit. Your kid just needs to concentrate on using his right hand more. Just tie his left hand behind his back, and he'll stop being such a fucking whiny baby and do stuff with his right hand. Like, just.
I think it's all bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on it, right? Secondly, let's assume.
He's saying secondly, but this is like his fourth point.
Yeah, this is like this is 78th.
Let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's just argue. I like to do this with leftists. I like to operate argue.
Oh, he's a right winger.
Oh, I really wish this guy wouldn't have identified himself as a conservative. Like, as a conservative myself, like I'm a right-wing conservative. For those of you that aren't aware of this, but I do identify as a right-wing conservative. But I am ashamed to be identified with this guy. Like, he's like, and this is my biggest problem with a lot of people in my party, in the Conservative Party. A lot of people in the Conservative Party do tend to be highly ignorant when it comes to issues of mental health. It's unfortunate that it's the liberals who tend to be more knowledgeable about mental health than conservatives. And I wish that wasn't the case. Like, I wish more conservatives would study psychology and study mental illness so they can be more knowledgeable themselves instead of being ignorant like this guy and Michael Savage.
Go figure.
Yeah, I'm so shocked.
From their premises, and then using that handicap, which is like shutting down half your brain, still draw logical conclusions and prove things that were wrong. So fucking what? Let's say DDHD is a real thing.
What? let's say, what is a real
Sounds
thing?
like he has a stuttering problem. You must have had shitty parents that didn't make him speak correctly.
Didn't they make him? Maybe made him a chef elocution classes. Yeah. You think he's
Let's say bipolar
Let's say
is a real thing, and not just
is
a
a real
common or
thing.
convenient excuse for really cunty, bitchy women to be cunts and bitches to their boyfriends to play mind games so they get that little adrenaline.
Oh, that's where this comes from.
So yeah, this is obviously he has some kind of bad experience with some woman or some ex-girlfriend or some girlfriend of his who had bipolar disorder, and he's now expressing his anger and vitriol against people with mental illnesses because of her. Like, I'm sorry that you lack the compassion to understand what your girlfriend or your wife or whoever is like, to understand what she's going through, and instead of actually taking the time to get to know where she's coming from, you decide to slander her, and you decide to take out your anger out on people like her. Like, I'm sorry that your life is so sad and pathetic that you decide that you want to lash out at people because you're upset with how your life is going. Like, it is evident for all people that you are obviously very hurting, and honestly, this is more of a reason why we in the Christian community should be praying for people like this. Because, like the saying goes, hurt people, and this guy is obviously hurting. He's trying to lash out and trying to hurt other people, like, because it makes him feel like a big tough guy. It makes him feel like big and powerful to attack people he deems are weaker than him or more vulnerable than him. So, like, those of you that are Christians in my audience, like, I suggest you pray for this guy. Like, lift him up in prayer and ask God to just convict his heart and to reveal his salvation to him and draw him to himself. Because that's, just like I say, the only hope that the mentally ill will ever hear about is in Jesus Christ. The only hope this guy will ever hear about is found in Jesus Christ as well.
That's where this comes from.
This all makes sense. We all just had the light bulb go ding ding. Oh man! Wow, how fucking transparent. Yeah, I'm sorry. That is completely transparent. Wow. All
right, play 90210. Make believe 90210. Let's say bipolar. Let's say Asperger's. Let's say.
And it's because of guys like this that this is why it's so important for people with mental illness to find people that they can identify with, people who understand them. Even if you don't know other people who struggle with mental illness, I do strongly suggest you find other people who struggle with mental illness. But even if you don't know other people with mental illness, then I strongly suggest you find people who are willing to take the time to understand you. And because we were created by God to be in community, and we need to be around other people. We weren't meant to be alone. So, like, because of people like this, we need to find people that truly understand us and truly care for us. And again, like, for those of you that that don't know where to look, I mean, on my Patreon account, for my Patreon members, I am starting a Discord community for our online peer support and fellowship with other believers and who are like-minded in the faith and who suffer with mental illness. So that'll be one resource for you. That'll be one resource for you to find people who you can identify with.
It's all fucking true and real. So fucking what?
Wait,
so
your approach to mental illness and mental disorders and learning disability is so fucking what? Just deal with it. So
Probably fake, but if they're real, so fucking what?
Yeah, that is so stupid. So effing what? Really? Like mental illness shouldn't be trivialized like that. Like mental illness should be taken seriously. Like, this guy doesn't understand that mental illness. Imagine if he said, "Oh, you have cancer? So effing what? Oh, you have diabetes? So effing what? Oh, you have bronchitis? So effing what?" Like you would immediately, or you're paraplegic? So effing what? Like if he said that to people like that, you would immediately know that he is wrong for saying that. So why does he get away with saying this about people with mental illness? People with mental illness, that's something just as serious as someone who's a paraplegic or someone who has cancer.
Logical solution to the problem. TJ,
Actually, honestly, I would rather have cancer than have mental illness. I think having mental illness is worse than having cancer.
what should I do? Just keep eating cheeseburgers. I don't know.
Well, first of all, I think
Let's
your
say
heart
heart disease is real.
So what?
Fucking
Joy?
fucking what, dude?
probably fake, but
Let's say your leg really is broken. So fucking what? I wish we could treat all medical issues like that.
are you pregnant? Walk that shit off.
Yeah, walk it off. You'll be fine. Walk that baby off. Squat that baby out. You'll be back to normal in a few minutes. If you can walk the abortion.
Live with it. It's not me telling you, man, the fuck up and live with it. I'm saying you got no choice but to live with it.
People are living with it.
So you can make a decision, which is
So are you saying that they should just live with it and not get treatment if there's a way to help them? I don't understand.
That's exactly what he's saying. He's saying those of us who have mental illness should just live with it and not get treatment. We should just deal with it. And like I said before, that is such a dangerous thing to say to someone with mental illness, because most likely you tell us to just live with it and to not seek treatment, we're going to end up believing that, and we're going to end up like not taking our medication and decide to live without seeking treatment, and that's going to cause a whole lot of problems, and we can either end up dead or in prison or in a mental institution. So I would strongly encourage people with mental illnesses to continue taking medication and to continue seeking treatment. That's the loving thing to do.
everybody today seems to be making the decision. So they use it as an excuse for their piss poor performance in life. They use it as an excuse not to try to sit there really living in their mother's basement, really not giving a try, really not trying hard in life. Meanwhile, proof is before in previous generations that must have had these disorders, they got off their asses and did something with their lives. So the choice is yours. It really is. You could say,
indigent people and vagrants,
This is when the whole ideology of personal responsibility gets way out of control. Yes, like I said before, we do bear, people who have mental illness do bear personal responsibility for the things we say and do. However, there is a very real aspect that people with mental illnesses, when we have severe enough psychosis, we can't be held responsible for what we say and do. Because if we are extremely delusional or we have extreme hallucinations, we cannot, it's almost as if we lose control of our faculties. And in a situation like that, instead of coming at us with condemnation and shame, you should come at us with compassion and understanding, and come with us with the gospel, and come to us the way Jesus would come to us, and just show us love. Show us love mixed with truth. Because you should always, Jesus came in grace and in truth. He didn't come with just grace. He didn't come with just truth. He came with both grace and truth. So that's what we should do. You should come to the mentally ill with both grace and truth.
There was no time period. No poverty or anything until very recent. Yeah, very recently. It was like the 1970s or something. Poverty was like, there's poverty now. Up until then, every single person had their... Yeah, the serfs living in Victorian England and, the people living in medieval times, they're all just living robust lives. Like, everything's great. No one here has mental illness. Everything's wonderful. Society functions perfectly. And then, the 1900s roll around and mental illness, nutty people. No, it's just the last 20 years. Well, the last 20 years.
It's liberalism.
It's literally since like 1994. Yeah, 1994. That's when everything went shitty. That tells you how bad he does the math. 1994? Yeah, that's right.
Wasn't there a time when someone asked TJ how old you were and you were like 19 and he said like 13 or something like that? Yeah.
Hey, these are the cards I've been dealt. I'm dyslexic. I got DDH. I got Asperger's.
This guy is completely ridiculous. Like, I'm not even gonna. Wow.
It's fine. You got all those ailments. Well, guess what?
So, by your definition, there's no such thing as a real psychologist, right?
I'm guessing he is. No. Basically, like when you say shit like this, you have to shit on the experts out of necessity. Because you're basically saying that you know better than people who have actually done research and written papers and actually studied the subject in depth. But you know better because you pulled some shit out your ass. Yeah, because he's saying they're just extremely biased. Like, they want this to exist, which I don't know why anyone would think that anyone would want that to be the case. It's just your typical conservative fear of science. Yeah, it's just like I would almost call it a psychosis in itself, where they're just like constantly like fuck science, evolution's bullshit, climate change is bullshit, mental illness is bullshit, but then they'll turn on their fucking webcam and they'll fucking get in their car and they'll do all these things that were contributed to humanity by science. But then as soon as there's something they don't like, they don't even bother to investigate. They don't have any sort of skepticism. They don't have any sort of real inquiry in the matter. They just say, oh, it's bullshit. It's typical cherry picking by them.
By the way, this is off topic, but please pray for these two people. I mean, they're obviously, as you can tell, they're obviously atheists. One guy's name's TJ. The other guy is Scotty. Please keep them in prayer because obviously, I mean, the stuff that they say is completely wrong. Like when it comes to their atheism, they're obviously delusional and they're obviously foolish, and so lift them up in prayer and just show them love and compassion. We don't need to be slandering them or talking mess about them or insulting them or anything like that. So just lift them up in prayer and ask that God will reveal his love and salvation to them as well. I just wanted to put that out there.
That you can either make your life the best it possibly can be or sit there and wallow in your self-pity. All right? Now, I'm going to deliver this, not to be, it is to be somewhat of a shock value. So maybe it shocks your frontal lobes into thinking. But it's also to make a very, because it's perfectly analogous. It's like Ferguson, Missouri. Okay? Look, you can, hey, you were born black. Okay, you know what? There's going to be some disadvantages with that. Choice number one. Hey, you know what? I'm black. Maybe a discriminated class in society, one of the lower classes. Might have some hurdles to overcome. You know what? Not under my control that I'm black. I was born this way. But I'm going to try my best anyway. I'm going to prove to other people that, just because I'm black doesn't mean I can't. Or you go to Ferguson route. Fuck you, man. Oh, discriminate.
Yeah. Don't try to change your culture of discrimination. Just accept it and try to work within it. That's funny how he's like that. I think this guy was standing in front of me. Literally.
First off, I just want to say that being black and having a mental illness are not the same thing. Yes, okay, so black people do have their own disadvantages in this culture, and that's for another topic altogether. But at the same time, though, mental illness is a disability. Being black is not a disability. Black people can still work, black people can still do things and still function normally in society without the aid of medications and stuff like that. Whereas a mental illness, it's a severe disability, that it's a severe chemical imbalance that causes the person to be severely disabled. So, like, it's not the same thing. So, and this guy equating the two as if it's the same is just false.
This is his taking it in the ass face. Are you sure? Okay.
This was the ultimate.
Okay. All right. So that was the videos that I wanted to share. Yeah, that was pretty much all the videos that I wanted to share. For those of you that stuck it through and watched this with me, like, I appreciate it. There's no more questions. So that was pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Like, if there's any more questions, I'm going to wait a couple minutes to see if anybody comes up with any more questions for me. But, like, if there's no more questions, then I do thank you for coming on here and joining me for this live stream. I really do appreciate the support that you guys show me. And if you find merit in this ministry, please donate to this ministry, to the Patreon account, as you feel led by the Lord. It's between you and God what you give. And if you do decide to give to the ministry, you will have exclusive content, such as access to daily devotionals on faith and mental health from the scriptures. You'll have, like I said on a couple times already, you have access to a private Discord community for peer support and online fellowship with other believers who suffer with mental illness, and other exclusive content. All right, so there's no more questions. So now that's it for this. Like, please like and share this video around, and make sure you comment below. Let me know what you guys think about anything I said. And yeah, and make sure you subscribe to my channel. And also pray for my ministry too. Pray that I can continue to make good content. Pray that I can continue to get the gospel out there to the mentally ill, because that's the only hope that the mentally ill will ever hear is hope in Jesus Christ alone. And also pray that I can continue educating the church on mental health issues. All right, thank you very much. Have a good day and stay blessed.